Even today, I remember there were some folks I was talking to, and they were talking about, man, you know, if you're a young lady or a young guy and you're looking to get married, these are the states to go to. Y'all laughing because you've heard it. You're like, oh man, LA, whew, child, we gotta pray, you know. But this is real talk. I remember they were like, yeah, you know, they broke it down. I said, wow, this is some wisdom right here. So, you know, if you're looking for a guy that's like this, you know, you should go to DC, you know, and I said, wow, this is so fascinating. Because we have found comfort in our intelligence. We have created a narrative of how to live our lives outside the counsel of God, because in his presence is where we get his counsel. We give Jesus praise.
Welcome to my channel, and as you watch, may you be blessed.
God, I know that this state is where X, Y, and Z happens, but do you have it for me there? And so when there is a shaking, the Lord is calling his people to get back in position and be the light. And so we're going to see that, you know what, the truth of the matter is, oftentimes we have this, you know, question about like, wait, how does God speak in X, Y, and Z? But you even see it that the same way that God spoke to Noah. And what I love about how God spoke to Noah, when you study that chapter, I mean, it is just gangster, you know, because literally the Bible goes from, you know, and God saw the world and he saw that it was filled with corruption, and there's no pause, just this fluid transition. And God said to Noah, build an ark. That tells you that they had this walk-in intimacy, that Noah had this ability to easily discern the voice of God. It was not his first encounter with God, that God could see something and just have a conversation with Noah. As he's looking, he's like, you know what, Noah, build this ark. Because I've seen that the earth is filled with violence and corruption. And in that same way, God can speak to you. Even right now, the Holy Spirit can be speaking to you. The problem is that we don't discern it. The problem is that we are lacking the ability to discern his voice. You see, there are 4 primary ways that God will often speak, that we experience the voice of God. And I'm going to go through this very quickly because the key thing that God showed me is what I want to hit on. But the first thing is that you have those who, you know, I refer to them as the feelers, right? These are people that have this heightened sensitivity to the emotions of God. You know, some might wonder, like, does God have emotions? Absolutely. The Bible will tell you about different types of emotions of God: anger, compassion, you know, love, hate. There are things that the Lord hates, right? And so when you are someone who, you know, when you can experience the voice of God as a feeler, your emotions are now surrendered to experience God's emotions concerning a thing. So this is, for example, when people will say things like, man, I don't have peace on this. Right? And you don't have peace on something that looks great on paper. Everything about it should be amazing, but there is something that you're like, man, I don't feel peace on this, because God is allowing you to experience the fact that he is not in it. But here's the thing too. Because, you know, Jesus would say, let's go to Philippians 4:7. The Bible would say, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding. Actually, no, before we go there, let's go to John 14:27. Jesus would say, peace I live with you, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives do I give you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Now, there is a peace that comes from God, and there is a peace that comes from the world. Because just because you sense I don't have peace on this is not the ultimate marker. Because you still have to vet it. Because the peace that comes from the world is the peace that, you know, is when you find comfort when nothing is shaking. What you're after is to lessen your fears, the voice of your fears. Because if there's a certain move that causes you to feel like, man, you know, this is, where's the money going to come from? How am I going to do this? How am I going to pay this bill? And X, Y, and Z. And so you choose to settle for an option that makes you feel safer. You see, I read this quote and it talked about how comfort is worse than a prison cell. that this illusion of comfort is actually worse. And that really it stood out to me, because could you imagine, and it gave me this idea, I'm like, can you imagine someone who is in prison and it's time for them to be released, but they're like, you know what, my friends are here, you know, I got a job here, it's cool, 3 square meal, I'm good, you know, just let me stay in my bunk. There's a whole world out there waiting for you to experience, but because what you've known for so long is this, then it's like, nah, I'm good. It's true story. There was a time that a friend of mine got caught up in some stuff and they got arrested, and they were really shaken about it. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna come visit them. That was my first time visiting, you know, someone in prison. So there was this whole thing. You have to get in the bus, then the bus takes you there, this whole thing. When I was in the bus, somebody was proposing to me an idea that was a crime. I said, am I being punked? And I'm like, literally, I said, you know, we are on the way to the prison. He's like, yeah, you know, I just got out. I said, and you trying to commit more crime? You're already negotiating your plans to commit more crime on the way. And it baffled me. I changed seats. I said, I don't know if they're recording devices here. I'm trying to go home after. Real talk. I was so baffled. I said, how in the world is this man looking for his next partner in crime on the way to the prison? Because that has become all they've known. And so there is this false peace. It's when you can stay in the place of your safety and comfort. That is why even when Jesus is talking about my peace I've given to you, he ends it with do not be afraid. Because even in the peace of God, your flesh could be troubled if it's not surrendered to God. So even when God gives you peace about a thing, if your flesh and your mind and your soul is not settled in his word, it could find fear. So the peace that comes from God is something different. It doesn't mean that it is the absence of chaos. And it doesn't mean that, you know, when the peace of God comes, everything is going to be beautiful. But it's transcending that beyond what you know, this is going to work out for good.
Thanks for watching. Here on my channel, we post gospel messages filled with divine insight to strengthen your faith, deepen your walk with God, and empower you for purpose. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification button for more life-changing teachings. See you in my next one. Bye.